All right, this will be a pretty simple video. I'm just going to look at a couple of grammar-related posts from the Fallible Ideas email list. So let's look at this first one. And I've looked a bit at some of the replies, by the way, but not particularly attentively or in detail. So I'm coming into this somewhat fresh perspective. So Elliot says, he offers this sentence: I was on the moon fighting space Nazis, and asks, are there two complements to was, on the moon and fighting space Nazis? My guess is one is an adverb, not adjective, to keep it to one complement. Which one and how can you tell? There are other possibilities like that fighting space Nazis modifies on the moon or vice versa, but they sound wrong to me. So let's just figure out the basic grammatical structure to get a handle on this. So I'm going to put the verb as the root node. Now should figure out how to set some defaults that I like. So we've got I. So let's just analyze this bit so far. So what do I have here? Basically, I was fighting. So I is the subject. I think I being the subject is uncontroversial. And then what was I doing? I was fighting. Fighting is a gerund, serving as the complement of this sentence. Now, this is incomplete, of course, in several respects. I guess that fighting has its own object because you're fighting something. So you're fighting Nazis, and a specific type of Nazi, space Nazi, which I've seen a film about, actually, a very bad film. Yeah, Iron Sky is the film. I don't recommend it. But if you want to see a movie about space Nazis, there's your solution to that problem. Okay. So my subject is the verb. Fighting is, this whole thing is like the object, but it's got like subparts. I'm treating fighting as sort of the main thing, and then that gerund has its own like object, because verbals can have objects. I need to remind myself of that, which is why I say it, because I still haven't quite fully internalized the idea of verbals, of the quasi verb-like nature of verbals, which sounds kind of funny when I say it. But there's some old FI threads of me like struggling and just wanting to treat them as being purely nouns, sort of like having been reborn as nouns. Okay. So then the question is what to do with on the moon. Now I think, where do I want this? On moon the. Now, so I think on the moon is an adverb, and part of the reason, like if I recall correctly, adverbs have this, or adverbial prepositional phrases, because on is a preposition, right? Yeah. So on is a preposition. This is a prepositional phrase, and adverbials, I think you can often move them around in a sentence, and because they're modifying the verb, which is sort of the root of the sentence, you can toss them around and it's okay. But we could say, on the moon, I was fighting space Nazis, and that would be fine. Or I was fighting space Nazis on the moon, and that would also be fine. And it's also fine the form that Elliot presented it in. So that makes me think that that's part of my argument for thinking it's an adverb. And another argument, a more substantive one, is that adverbs, telling you where something is going on, is one of the standard things that adverbs do. So this is on the moon is telling us, where were we for this fighting of the space Nazis? Whereas, space tells us which kind of Nazi, space Nazi. So it occurred to me that there's also there's a different way of analyzing this, maybe, which would be, I've done it on the right here, which would be to say, it's similar to what I was just saying, but you basically include fighting in the verb. You say, I was fighting. So I was fighting Nazis. Subject, verb, complement, prepositional phrase. And this doesn't strike me as super terrible because I think it's giving information about like what the sentence parts are in a meaningful way, but it doesn't give the information for each sentence. I mean, for each word rather. So it's not as nice or principled as trying to look at each word. But it seems reasonable. And the overall structure, I think, is at the sentence level is the same. Because we still have a subject, a verb, and a complement and a prepositional phrase. So the only issue is the fighting, like where we're putting that. So that seems okay. So I noticed there are several emails about this, so let's see what other people came up with. We've got Alyssa. If we can swap on the moon and fighting space Nazis. If we can swap on the moon and fighting space Nazis sentence. I think there's a typo here. Without changing the meaning. Maybe in the sentence? Without changing the meaning. Then we could analyze the result and said, I was fighting space Nazis on the moon. Yeah, hey. Verb was fighting. So see, that's how Alyssa's doing it. This distinction of the treatment of fighting, I think, has come up. I think it's the same issue that's come up recently in like some Discord chats and whatnot of more versus less principled ways of thinking about verbs and verbals and multi-part verbs. There's at least some overlap. Subject I, object Nazis, modifiers on the moon is a prepositional phrase modifying fighting. It answers the question, where did the fighting take place? Indeed. Space modifies Nazis. It answers the question, what kind of Nazis? So this seems basically reasonable to me. And then Ann B says, I thought about I was on the moon by itself. I think was is an action verb there and is modified by on the moon. You could write, I was on the moon fighting space Nazis, comma added. Then fighting space Nazis is a modifier. I'm not sure what it modifies. I'm not sure I agree with this. Partially, it might be a writing conceptual issue that I'm having trouble with, because like I could see somebody writing something like, I was in the store just looking around. Okay, fine. And the takeaway I would get from this is almost like an aside that's not really important. You know, the main thing is where you were, and then you were sort of looking around, maybe kind of low energy. Whereas this is pretty important. So it seems weird to put it in like the aside zone after the subject verb preposition comma. That's more a writing critique than a grammar critique per se. I don't know what I think about the modifier thing, and Anne doesn't know at least of this email, at least of the time of writing this email, so I'm not going to get preoccupied over that. So let's see what Alyssa says. Typo, the word sentence shouldn't have been there. Okay. Forgot to listen to the post with TTS before sending. I don't do that with every post. I'm doing that more with sort of, I was going to say real writing, like writing that I care, where I care a lot about the error correction of removing typos, particularly where it's like more public facing and I want it to look and read nicely. But like I'm not against that step, but I just thought that was interesting, that because this seems to be indicating that this is a routine policy that was forgotten in this one instance. I love TTS, by the way, for catching things, because you know, it's that when doing editing passes, you know, they say that you have to wait a while to unload it from your brain in order to not read it in the same style that you meant to write it, in which case you'll miss all the typo, you know, you might miss the typos or the double words or something. But with TTS, you can just do it right away and it doesn't matter. Like you don't have to wait, you don't have to unload it. You just listen to what the computer says, and just, you know, the typos will just hit you immediately for certain kinds of typos. If it's a homophone type of thing where you're mixing up your there and theirs, then that's not going to be you're not going to catch that with GTS. Although, standard like word and stuff can be okay about that sometimes for certain common things. But for lots of stuff, you will catch it. Okay. So there's one more and B. My current thinking is that the one with the comma is correct and the original isn't. Fighting space Nazis modifies was or I. So was doesn't have any complement. If the sentence was just I was fighting, I could see looking at it as fighting being an adjective complement participle and was being the verb. I'm more comfortable saying that was fighting is the verb and it's in the past progressive tense. Okay. All right. I had to think about it a bit, but I do not agree. I'm not sure about fighting space Nazis being a modifier because I think it fits better as a complement. Like fighting, I'm taking as a gerund, which is a noun, or serves. It's a noun. We treat it as a noun. It's a verbal noun, but it's a noun. And then Nazis is another noun. Space is modifying Nazis. But this isn't like a prepositional phrase. If it was a prepositional phrase, then the modifier role would make more sense. But we've got a noun and then another noun in here, and so I'm skeptical that it's just operating as the modifier. So I think I disagree with Anne about this. And so that's the first grammar thread. So then we have another one that's much. Actually, there's a few different ones. There's this long two in different situations one, but I don't know if I'm going to go through that today. We'll see. But let's look at grammar sentence tree video. So Elliot gives us this sentence. Your theory of what people want from a conversation partner accurately models the world. I try to analyze this sentence, and then he has a link where Elliot and Internet Rules do it on the stream. So let's try analyzing that before I look at what they did or see what Anne said. I should say I was somewhat paying attention to the stream when it first aired, not fully, so I've sort of had it semi-spoiled, although I didn't do the super detailed type of analysis that I'm going to try and do now. But I'm not coming at this one totally fresh, just, So this is the basic structure. Theory models world. And basically, it's pretty simple because this whole thing is just a long prepositional phrase modifying theory. And so you knock that out, and then you just have some adjectives and adverbs to knock out, and then you've got the basic structure. So I ran into a bit of an issue just in terms of the one part of the tree structure, and I'm not sure if I did that accurately or appropriately. Because normally with prepositional phrases, I'm used to putting the object of the prepositional phrase directly below the preposition in a tree. But here, or actually, I guess what I could do, that makes me feel better, I guess. Because we had this construction, what was it? Your theory of what people want. Siri thought I was talking to her. Your theory of what people want. Oh, I see. Theory. That's what set her off. It can sound pretty close, I guess. It seems like we had a whole clause with the structure with want as the verb, people as the subject, and what as the object, and what as also the linking glue. So this whole thing serving, I guess, as the object of the preposition in a way, but the primary preposition still being the primary object, I should say, still being what. And so I found that a little more complicated than, say, if it was, your theory of epistemology accurately models the world. That would be analytically much simpler because you just put epistemology right here, and as far as the propositional phrase, you'd be done with it. But I think I'm satisfied with this, so I'm going to move on. And then I put the nested prepositional phrase down here. So we've got your theory of what people want. Okay, this is interesting. Now I'm wondering if I've actually attached to the right thing, and maybe I've overcomplicated this whole tree. Because what is from a conversation partner actually modifying? Let's just read through it. Your theory, what theory of what people want? Want from who? From a conversation partner? So is it modifying want? Is it more like that? So if it's okay. So I'm not sure if I'm entirely satisfied with this, but I don't know if I want to spend more time puzzling over it. So it seems good enough. So, and then from a conversation partner accurately models the world. And that part is very easy. And accurately, the adverb I just put, actually kind of like, it was the default, but I actually kind of like the above the verb position for the adverb in a way, because it is sort of spilled down. Okay, so let's see what Ann B said, and then maybe we'll review the video. So Ann B says, when I read this, I wondered how to handle the what in the tree. Putting it in two different nodes with different labels seems like a reasonable way to do it. I think from a conversation partner modifies want. The case could be made for saying it modifies what. Yeah, so she went through a lot of the same analysis. So I was just scrubbing through the video, and it looks like Elliot went with two whats, like I had done earlier, and also connected the nested prepositional phrase to the second what, which, yeah, that's the organization I had earlier. So I don't really strongly disagree. I'm sort of waffly on which one I prefer. And then it looks like Internet took the other side of it and went with what's currently in my tree. So that's interesting. We all sort of converged on the same points. So, all right, I think I'll end the video here.